Welcome everyone to today's webinar where my good friend Glenn Robertson from PureChannels and myself, Rick van den Bosch, CEO and founder from Channext, are going to talk about how do you create content your partners will love, and very important, they will actually use. And I think that's one of the key topics Glenn and I were discussing, like when we were thinking about what shall we host a webinar about and what do we hear so often in the market. And we went back to our combined 20 plus years of experience in channel marketing. Glenn a little bit more than me, to be fair. But I think one of the questions we got time and time again was, Rick or Glenn, we don't have enough content. Like we know we need it for our partners and for our channel, but we don't have it. But all the time, once we started looking into that, it was like, but is that actually true? And I think that's the journey we would like to take you along with today as well, where we're actually going to dive into what does it mean to create good content? Why do you need it? But also definitely, how do you make sure that partners are going to utilize it? And before we're going to start, we've thought of a few statements that we would like to ask you as well to see what our audience today looks like and where we are at the moment with our partner marketing. And maybe to start with the first one, we'd love to know, are you in, oh, and by the way, if you share it, you can first select your chat and then go from sending it to a specific person or to the host and panelists to everyone. But maybe first to get a bit more view here, like, are you in partner sales or in partner marketing? I see first one coming in, partner sales, partner marketing, both. Definitely also an option indeed. We see that more and more now. And then the next question, how many partners do you manage? I see 1 to 20 here. Someone with 100 to 500. Interesting. Always good to see what a diversity there is there. And then a statement, we don't have enough content. Is that true or false in your company? I see true coming in here. Another true. And then maybe the next one, I'm happy with our partner marketing participation. Maybe this is also a nice one for you to answer, Glenn. Here, what do you usually see with many vendors that you're working with? And then last but not least, before I'm going to hand over the mic to Glenn, it can be hard to prove the ROI of partner marketing internally. I see another true here. Another one. Well, I think it's very clear here that the thing we're going to talk about today is quite a hot topic and definitely very important that we approach this in the right way in the channel. And therefore, today, Glenn is actually going to start focusing very much on how do you create this content and why is it so important. And after Glenn, I will take over on the piece. Okay, and then next, once you have the content, how do you make sure that as many partners as possible are going to utilize it? And with this, Glenn, I'm going to hand the mic over to you.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, you're very kind. So I'm going to share. Here we are. Okay, so welcome. Thank you ever so much, Rick, for having me and kicking this off today. As Rick mentioned, I'm Glenn Robertson, CEO of PureChannels, the channel agency, and I'd like to really start today by just taking a look at what we mean by content and why it's so important. Here's a quote that you can use, share, comment on it, use it as a starting point for some content today, tomorrow, whenever. But really, it's so true in everything we do. The indirect channel runs on content. Okay, wherever you are, whatever you do, to be fair, you don't even have to call it channel anymore, right? Ecosystem, partnerships, hybrid scenario, universe, network. Content is the driving force behind everything. It touches and influences everything. People, process, programs, sales, marketing, operations, training and certifications, absolutely everything. Every interaction, every engagement, every transaction, every referral, every communication that you have, content is absolutely at the heart of it. One of the key things that influences successful maximization of indirect revenue is partner experience. Okay, on the assumption that optimizing partner experience leads to maximizing indirect revenue. I think we can all agree on that. Our model is here in its simplest and most naked form. And of course, it shows partner experience at the core, and if you look round there, content plays a pivotal role in absolutely every single part of our PX model. In engagement, education, enablement, evaluation, and evolution over time, content is absolutely at the heart of it. Okay, so opening gambit done. I told you kind of like my early thoughts on why content is so important, but can we get some context? Yes, of course. And guess what? And excuse me, but I'm actually going to use the C word, COVID. COVID absolutely changed the indirect game in a never seen before way. In fact, it didn't only change the game, it actually created a brand new one when everyone was forced online. Everyone had lines blurred between work and home. We started acting more like consumers in our B2B lives, and we were in more familiar surroundings because we were at home. And therefore we did more familiar things. This accelerated change in B2B buying, and it accelerated change in indirect. At the same time, what also happened was that the new workforce came to prominence. Okay, the millennials, our Gen Zers, right? They got a turbo boost in B2B land and in indirect land because they totally got it. Everyone else was forced into an environment. A lot of other people, should we say, were forced into an environment where they might not have been super comfortable. Our millennials and our Gen Zers absolutely are. 65% of the workforce, in fact, are millennials and Gen Zers. They've grown up in an entirely search engine, digital review site world. Okay, they buy using digital first, and they conduct the majority of their buying journey anonymously, and without even talking to sales. That translates into, as we know, 62% of B2B buyers these days say that they consume 3 or more, so at least 3 pieces of content before engaging with any company. And this is massive, right? 3 out of every 4 people buying something won't buy anything unless they have consumed several pieces of content. And as buyers move through their 3 stages of buying, which is awareness, consideration, and decision, content clearly is at the heart of everything that they do. It's the only constant throughout. These stats are from Gartner, HubSpot, and we'll see some from Canalys a bit later on. So just to give some additional context there. Now, the flip side of that, which also is super important, is that 40% of buyers have named something that really annoys them, right? So having to contact sales for a demo or for a free trial is one of the things that vendors do that annoys them the most. They want to do it themselves. They want to make their own choices. They want to do their own research. They don't want to have it forced upon them. 40%, that's quite a lot. So why is this important? Okay, look, if we're in channel, we're in indirect, we're in ecosystems, we will have seen this. So we can kind of skip through it. All right, this is Jay McBain's Channels Ecosystem Landscape. If you haven't seen it, go find it. We can make it available to you. It's unbelievably important. Okay, it shows here 223 companies in 2021 accounting for nearly $4 billion. Okay, and these are the techs, these are the platforms, these are the organizations that are basically running the entire global channel ecosystem. And whether you're here today as a vendor or a distributor, an agency, any type of partner, a consultant, a writer, a YouTuber, an influencer, or a parent, child, all of the above or any combination of, you will be touching one or more of these Canalys islands at some point. And guess what? Content is key to every single one of them. If customers are visiting marketplaces on their own or through a partner, they'll be interacting and engaging with content. If vendors want to recruit new partners, they'll be engaging with and creating new compelling content. When partners want to run demand gen, or a vendor wants a partner to run demand gen or a lead gen activity, they are creating and providing and therefore distributing content. So it's so important at every stage of the indirect channel that we work in. Quote here to remember, it stuck with me for many years, in fact, actually, from a good friend of mine, an absolute B2B marketing guru, should we call him, Paul Catch, owner and CEO at Roosterpunk, and also author of a book called Humanizing B2B. People buy on emotion and justify with fact. Okay. Now, does that sound familiar? Because it probably will do. Think of the last few things that you bought, either personally or in your business organization. Everything that caused the emotion and then everything that was justifying that decision to buy came through content. The emotion was caused by content, and the fact was delivered by shared content. So again, content being the heart of everything. But of course, we don't have enough content, do we, Rick? This is something that we hear all the time. I couldn't possibly create some of this content. We couldn't possibly do this. There's far too much that's needed. We don't have enough content. Well, the reality is you probably do, or at least you have access to enough content. The other thing is, if you genuinely don't believe or don't feel like you've got enough of the right content, go create some. And there's a number of ways that you can do that, because to start with, it could be quite daunting, but it doesn't have to be. All of the different assets, all of the different materials, all of the different concepts that you have to create. And are we doing it over here, online, offline, design, copywriting, concepting, messaging, proposition? How do we wrap it all up? How do we put it all together? How do we transfer it from a social post delivered by a white paper, or do we do video? Why do we do video? So all of these things, all of these questions can be potentially daunting. But what we can do is we can start sourcing that content. And it's really rather easy, and it can be really broken down into some straightforward things. Where can I get this content from? Well, firstly, look in the mirror, right? You are a real person with real thoughts and real opinions. You probably do a great job. You probably think so. Some others might not, but the point is, you do a job, and you're there in the organization for a genuine reason. So if you've got these thoughts and opinions, share them. If you go and look at all the content that you consume and access every day, other people have created that. And whether or not you agree or disagree, you can take that content and you can repurpose it. You can share it. You can comment on it. And other people can do that too with content that you've created. If you don't believe that you've got enough of the right type of content, you can get other people to help you to create and share and distribute that content. Where else can you find content? In the past, loads of content has been created in the past, whether it was the recent past or the distant past. But you can rework it, you can refresh it, and you can share it. It will almost always be relevant. You can look to the current. You can see what's going on at the moment in your business, in the industry, and you can share thoughts and opinions on that. And you can go to your portals. You can go to other environments where content exists. And then, of course, because you are genuinely opinionated with great thoughts and great opinions on stuff, you can build on those, and you can look to the future to share trends and to share ideas on what you believe is coming. So there's always great sources of content out there. It's just for us to make a list and find. So some examples of some content that can be created using third parties. We're obviously an agency, but you can do this with individuals, with freelancers, within your own internal teams. a whole host of various different assets that is going to carry your content to the people who you want to engage with it. So there's a whole host of things here. It doesn't always have to be digital, doesn't always have to be social. Can also be things like goodie packs, swag. You know, people still absolutely love swag. We're seeing a massive upturn on physical content that is being shared at the moment. Of course, webinars, of course, video, of course, PDFs, white papers, insight papers, infographics, landing pages, and a whole host of other things that we'll probably talk about in a moment. Now, if you don't feel confident or comfortable or feel like you've got anybody, you know, to be creating this level of content, and the other thing is, it doesn't always have to be this kind of level of content. It's actually really easy to put your hand in your pocket, take out your smartphone from your bag or off your desk, and just start creating content that will engage and drive awareness for you and for your organization. I do it quite regularly with short snippet videos, which are really easy to create using a smartphone and video platform. And what's really interesting is the most popular and most engaged pieces of content that I've shared over the last month have had nothing to do with our business, nothing to do with me telling people about our services or what we do or who we work for or what our client lists are or how good we are. It's to do with connecting with people on a human level. Okay, so on the left there, you'll see something that is just about me sharing an experience that I had with other people. It's about sharing experience with other people, tagging them in and getting the message out. The middle one is some actual work that I did around one of the parts of the PX model. So this was about engagement. So there's me thinking this is really important because it's good work, it's thought leadership stuff. The most comments and the most interactions that I got off of this piece of content was the fact that my daughter had left a little "I love you" note in the bottom corner of the whiteboard. And that's where the interaction came from. The third one on the right is a short video that I made about somebody else's content. That was actually watched for just in excess of 3 hours because I'd made a short 1 minute, 35-second video talking about somebody else's compelling content. So a little bit about why content and creating good content is so important. I'll hand back over to Rick now. Thank you ever so much, of course, for listening. Open to questions. Please put them in the chat. And of course, Rick and I will go through and answer absolutely anything content related as soon as we can. So thank you. And back over to you, Rick.
Thank you very much, Glenn. And I really like this last slide as well, because I think it really shows how easily you can create content just with your smartphone. But also a medium like LinkedIn is excellent, I think, to continuously make sure you stay top of mind with your partners, because that's a big part of partner marketing as well, of course, to do the two partner communication well. So excellent example, and excited to get into the roundtable immediately after my presentation.
Very good. Thanks. I'll stop sharing. Over to you.
Thank you. There we go. Yeah, so I think the thing I'm going to focus on the most is how do you, once you have the content, actually make sure that partners are going to utilize it and share it with their end users? Because that's the most important thing, of course. Like first you have the content, then your partners need to adopt it, but eventually the end users need to adopt it, because that's where we drive the revenue. And before I dive into how you can solve this and how you can make it easier for partners, I think it's interesting to first look into why is it so difficult to get partners on board for your partner marketing. And if you look at the partnerships market at the moment, it's booming. More and more tech vendors are entering the market every day. Almost all tech sales are partner assisted, and end users actually prefer partner-led sales. So we see more and more vendors entering the market and looking at partnerships, partner-led growth as the way to go to market. This is awesome for us, of course, for all of us, because we are in the partner market, but there's also a challenge that comes with it, because the partner landscape is getting more and more crowded. If more and more vendors are entering the market and we're all competing for the same attention of a partner, then eventually, how do we make sure that the partner is going to work with us versus with another company? And we see that there are some challenges in driving revenue and marketing together with your partners. And one of the things that's super important to always keep in mind when you're working on your partner marketing activities is that almost all your partners work with 20 to 30 vendor brands approximately. So it should be a continuous thing in your mind, like how do we make sure that we stay top of mind with the partners and get them to talk about us versus someone else in the market. The second thing, what we always see is that partners' time and resources are very limited. So once you have a partner, most of the time they have approximately 1 FTE, if lucky, or less, to do their marketing for the full company. But they need to do their own corporate marketing, but also for all those vendors they are working with. So it's very hard to get those partners participate in demand generation activities. And finally, one of the things that was always very hard was how do you track the full sales and marketing pipeline? So how do you get leading indicators that actually lead to the lagging revenue? And that's, of course, the thing we're all aiming for in partner marketing. So how can we create more and more proof points that what we're doing is leading to revenue in the end? And I'm going to dive into that at the end of my presentation to look, okay, what are the different means of measuring success? And this leads to a couple of things. And I think one of the things that are usually most frustrating is that you see on average less than 10 to 15% marketing participation. So from all the partners that are out there, and only less than 10 to 15% is participating in the activities that vendors enroll for them. And this is a pity, of course, because once the content is created, all the energy has been put into it and all the work has been done. And then next, it's the partners who need to share it with the end user. And the more partners do this, the more impact you make with your marketing. And the second thing is that we see that in the average partner program, many partners are actually inactive and not generating revenue. And I think one of the best ways to get and maintain the attention of your partners is to help them drive revenue. And the best way to help them drive revenue is by helping them generate demand. So those two things are very much connected to each other. And finally, it feels like a black box sometimes. So we have all those partners with all their own marketing and sales systems, and all the data is scattered and fragmented throughout the channel. So it's very hard to get a grasp of what's happening in the channel on the marketing level. So the challenge we all need to solve is making sure that once we get new partners on board, they immediately engage, and following by doing revenue. Because if you don't do that, you go into the vicious cycle, or we call it the leaky partner bucket, where we keep adding more and more partners, while at the same time they are dropping out in different phases of the partner journey. And this is exactly where partner marketing and to partner communication plays a crucial role. So we want to break this cycle. And we believe that vendors that drive demand and make partner engagement smooth are the ones that will win partner mindshare and revenue growth. I like that Glenn used the word partner experience. That's what should be on top of mind all the time. How do we put the partner experience first every single day? Make it easy for them to work with us, make them successful, make it fun to work with us. Those are things that can really help you accelerate your channel and your partner marketing efforts. So if you look at growing your channel and growing your channel revenue, if I would really simplify it, and then I mean really, really simplify it, there's only 2 ways in which you can drive partner revenue. Either a partner talks about your brand, so they start talking about your brand to an end user to sell eventually, which can only be done if there's high partner mindshare and engagement, or an end user asks about your brand to a partner, which can only happen if there's good end user awareness and demand. Or if you look at it, there can either be channel push or end user pull. And I think in both of them, that's where there's a crucial role for us as partner marketers. How do we make sure that we get our partner mindshare or top of mind within a partner and the engagement as high as possible, with good content in terms of training, with partner communication, with partner events, partner webinars, etc., to make sure that you keep the engagement high. And on the other hand, how do we help partners to generate demand together so end users start asking them about our brand versus partners having to talk about it? And if you get both right, that's when you will get into the ultimate revenue cycle within the channel. And the thing is, if you want to get of course, today we're talking a lot about the right bottom side as well. So end user pool. So how do you make sure partners can actually help you generate demand and you can help partners to generate demand? And the only way to do this is if partners are actually going to utilize the content and the marketing that you make available to them. And one of the first things that's crucial if you want to increase your partner marketing utilization is to segment and engage your partners. And what I mean with segment is what you really would want to know is to what type of end users are my partners selling? So in what type of verticals, in what type of regions, in what type of language, etc. So you can provide them with the content that fits their end user base. Because if you do it like this, what we heard a lot in the market, Glenn and I, if you put all your content in one big bucket and then give it to the partner, they get so overwhelmed that they don't even start. Well, if you ask your partner upfront, what type of content do you like? What is your end user market look like? What does your end user market look like? And then only bring them content that fits their needs, then they will love it and they will start interacting and engaging more and more with your content. The second thing is the thing that we call always on marketing. And I'm going to dive into what that concept is later a bit deeper. But the thing with partners, once we started interviewing many of them, like what is the reason why sometimes there's no interaction, is that they are simply overwhelmed a lot of the times. So not in terms of the content they receive, but they have so many stakes to keep high, and therefore they can't interact with the marketing as often as they like. So it's not a matter of that they don't want to, it's a matter that they don't have time to, or that they simply just forget. So how can we enable them in such a way? And the third one, how can we make it much more data informed? Because if we create a feedback loop back from partners, what they think about content, but also from end users, how they are engaging with the content, what the interaction is, then you can continuously improve your content and make the utilization even higher. And if you look at partner segmentation, there are a couple of things you can do. So I think there are a lot of things to segment on, but here I took some important ones that can help you bring the right content to the right partner. An example is region. So is it just for it can be for a full region like EMEA, but it can also be more specific for a country like the Netherlands or United States. Or partner type is very important. Tech partners can have a very different content need than VARs or than MSPs. Language is crucial. I think if there's one thing we can attest to is that if, for example, in France, you don't offer French content, they will never use it. So the only way you can have your partners utilize that content is if you pay them with MDF to actually translate it themselves. So there's also a way of thinking like, what if we help our partners locally translating it to actually bring it to them proactively? Well, what partner tier? That's a thing that we see a lot in terms of what type of campaigns we offer to partners. The vertical is very important. So is it about healthcare? Is it about government? Is it about education? If you have a campaign about education, you want to make sure it only goes out to partners that actually sell into education. What type of product categories? If you have multiple, making sure that if a partner only sells a certain product category, that you only give that one to them. And if they sell multiple, that they get more content. What type of company size do they target? So is it more SMB, mid-market, or enterprise? And distributors. So for example, if you have specific distribution campaigns, that it only goes to the partners that are actually connected to that distributor. And this can help you to really increase the content adoption of your partners because you provide them only what's relevant for them. And then I'm going to the concept of always on marketing. And before I explain what it is exactly, it's good to share a story about the Dutch donor registrations with you. Because there was a new law introduced here in the Netherlands in 2018. Because in the Netherlands, they had a lot of difficulties to get donor registrations. Because what was the case? Once you became 18 years old, then you would get letters at home whether you wanted to opt in to become a donor register. But many people didn't do that. So our number of donor registrations was only about 15 to 20% or so. And that was very hard because those donors were very highly or those organ donors were very much needed for healthcare and for actually improving that in such a way. So what they did at the moment, because they also interviewed many people, etc., and looked like, why is it not happening? And then people, yeah, I see the letter, but then I forget about it, etc. So what they did was they turned it around. So they work with an always on principle, where as soon as you become 18, everyone is standard on yes, but you can very easily log in and say, no, I don't want to be an organ donor. And with that, all of a sudden, the number of organ donors in the Netherlands grew from like 15 to 20% to around 80%. So it was a massive jump in number of organ donors there. And that was something that I found very interesting, because I thought it sounds very similar to the story I just shared about partners, right? They want to participate, but they oftentimes simply just forget. So what if we would apply that principle to partner marketing? And what we see there, if you work with an always on method, so how does it work? You create content, you have your partners connect to a platform where they can easily connect their socials, for example, or their website. You create a campaign and put it in the platform, and without the partners having to do anything, everyone is on the always on mode, unless they log in and say, no, I don't want to participate. And in such a way, we saw an example here in Logitech Benelux where they really grew their partner marketing participation to 93%. So they were really struggling with how can we serve all our partners, both managed and unmanaged, the large and the smaller partners. Well, we have a lack of resources and the partner has a lack of resources. And I think that's a very interesting way to think about, like, how can you serve your partners in a way that you create it for them? And also interesting to think about, if you then create content, like what type of content do you need, but also what starting point is there? And here you can see, for example, one of the campaigns that were created where it started with just one white paper about how to combine Microsoft Teams and Logitech in the best way. But that then very easily was converted into a landing page, into a banner, into a social post, etc. So you start with a central piece of pillar content, and from there you grow it to a full campaign. You publish the campaign in your platform for the partner, and then with one click on the button, it goes out to all of them. They get a message at that moment where they can review all the assets. They can even edit it, so they stay in control. But it always ends with PS. If you do nothing, the campaign will automatically start publishing on your social media, on your website, etc. And then finally, it's measuring, of course. So how do we make sure that we measure the effect of partner marketing? And if you look at the left side, I think that's a very common one for all of us. We're very used to that. We first generate an MQL, that is then converted into an SQL, and then it becomes pipeline where we actually work on the deal with a partner. And that's the trackable piece of channel. But there's also a massive piece of the channel that's very hard to track. And therefore, all the partner marketing efforts that we're doing is sometimes hard to get back to that. Because what you see there when you're, for example, helping your partners with social selling and you help them become active on LinkedIn and send people to their website, etc. Oftentimes, those are actually already towards their own customer base. So they don't actually fill in a form or start as an MQL, but it's directly picking up the phone, calling their partner that they've known for 10 years already, or sending them an email, which is never tracked, but you still want to see, okay, but we want to see which partners are very active in partner marketing and with what their end user reaches to eventually bring that back towards revenue. And a thing that a lot of our customers are focusing on at the moment is, how do we measure that partner marketing success with a score that helps us to actually compare partners to each other? And you want to measure a couple of things to do such a thing. So on the one hand, it's the partner metrics. So how is our partner base growing in general within our program? On the other hand, it's the activity score. So from all our partners, how many are participating in our campaigns, with our social posts, with our landing pages? Are they giving feedback to us on our content so we can improve the program? And then finally, what was the end user impact? So how many end users did we reach? What was the engagement with those end users? What was the conversion? The total performance of the campaigns? And you can tie all these data points back into one score like a partner, we call it the partner marketing engagement score, or you can call the partner marketing health score, whatever you want. But then bring it into a standardized score that where you can actually compare partners with each other. Because then it becomes very interesting. If you see that your most active partners with the most end user impact always end up on top for your revenue growth, that's where you can really start building correlations between your partner marketing activities and the participation of your partners towards revenue growth, parallel to your pipeline that you're already measuring, of course. So this is a new way where you can really focus on getting more and more data driven with your partner marketing and seeing what the efforts, what it eventually leads to. And before we dive into the roundtable, if you want to know more about how to do that in a very scalable way, always very welcome to tell you more about it, or also to have a call with you together with Glenn, maybe to think about your content, etc. So please let us know. But then I think onto the interesting part as well, Glenn, and a question that's very top of mind for me after seeing your presentation. If you have a new customer that comes to you and they first start with that comment, like, we don't have enough content, where do you usually start or help them when it comes to your content creation strategy?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, and we do. We have it literally all the time. You know, the place to start, weirdly enough, is at the end, right? So it's not about it should never be about talking about the actual pieces of content. You know, is it a white paper? Is it a blog? Is it an article? Is it some insight? Is it a webinar? It should never be about starting with the actual activity. It should also always be about going to the end and working out what the outcome is likely to be. What is it you want to achieve by creating a content strategy? What is it, you know, why? We have to lead with the why. Why are we doing this? Why do we need to create content? What is the outcome going to be? And then that will actually drive what it is you need to be doing. So if you work out what your end outcome is, it's the same. It's the same as all, you know, regular marketing theory, regular sales theory. It's about looking at the outcome. Okay, we know that in the indirect channel, everything leads to a number, right? You talked about the metrics, you talked about the measurement. Everything leads to a number. It's becoming more and more important to be able to track, to be able to deliver proof of performance, to be able to look at ROI up front, not just at the end, as in after the activity. So it's really, really important that you kind of fast forward to the end. What is it that we want to achieve? Let's start with the why, and then you can work backwards on what are going to be the best ways, the best activities, the best pieces of content that we need to create in order to achieve that.
And then once you have the why, where do you then maybe start in terms of like looking, like what type of content is there already available, or what would be a next step from there?
So again, it kind of comes back to that partner experience. So if we're talking specifically about partner marketing, and we're talking about marketing content, let's call it, for partners, for partners to use, then we kind of have to look at, you know, how easy can it be for them to do. Can we make an assessment on what do they have in place? You talked about time, you talked about resource, you talked about expertise. So what content do we need, and what content exists at the moment, and what content is going to be easy for partners? Part of that, looking at what do we want to achieve, is going to be related to the PX model that I showed earlier. So if you're looking to engage partners so that they can then go on to use content to put in front of their end users, then that's going to be maybe slightly different content than if you're going to be wanting to educate your partners, for example. And if you're then going to want to go through into enablement, then that's likely to be slightly different content. So that's why it's really important to understand the why, and then that will drive the what. And then, of course, we do a review of what exists at the moment. Do we know any success stories? Do we know what partners want? Oh yeah, that's a really important point that maybe some of us sometimes forget. How do we know what content partners are going to like and are going to use and are therefore going to need? We ask them. Right. I know it sounds simple. I know it seems obvious. I know it seems straightforward, but so many so many people that we work with, so many huge global organizations that we work with, almost always forget that really fundamental point. Okay, when was the last time you asked your partners what content they need and want from you? Oh yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, we should really do that. So yeah, you really should.
I really like that one. There's also a thing that I always tell to customers and to other partner marketers. What really helps when you, for example, work on a campaign draft or content draft, to put one title above your document, and that with the question, "What's in it for the partner?" ? And then continuously keep thinking about it. Also, when you review it before you send it out, like, is this about the partner at the moment? Because I think that's one of the things, for example, also in terms of utilization, when you send it out, and where there's also a crucial role for two-partner communication, make it completely about them. Why is this campaign important for them? What are they going to drive with it? What did you, maybe if you already have experience with that campaign or something like that in a different region or with a different partner, show some social proof, etc. The more you can show the partner why this will help them be successful, the more utilization you will see there as well.
Absolutely. A quick point. We talk about impact and value here at PureChannels. Okay. What impact? So if we're looking at creating some content, maybe we're looking at a strategy, maybe we're looking at some tactical activity. Okay. We look at impact and value. What impact is it going to have on the partner and for the partner, both positive and negative? Because it's really easy to get caught up in, it's going to be great, they're going to love this content, it's going to be super successful, and it's so easy because we know how to do it. And actually, you also have to consider the potential for negative impact on the partner. Do they have the time? Do they have the knowledge? Do they have the resource? How long will this take them? Is it really as easy as we think it is? So we have to look at impact, both positive and potential for negative. And then value. What value is it going to drive? Because that can be derived from asking the partner whether or not they want and need it. So is it going to drive value for them? And if so, how? And is it not? Great. Well, in that case, if we know that, we can change it. And that goes back to what you've just said. And also when you talked earlier about the channel push versus the end user pull, we talk about something exactly the same, but we just talk about a vendor out model, which is vendors pushing content out and onto their partners, versus a partner in model. So that's partners contributing into the mix in order to tell the vendor what they want out of it.
Oh, I like that one as well. I see we have a question here.
Yeah.
Is it possible? Oh, it's a Channext release. Is it possible to connect or integrate Channext to other partner management tools, e.g., Partner Stack? Eventually, it's possible, but we don't have a integration at the moment. What we usually see is that there's a PRM, and from there you log into to Channext, so to say. I just saw it. I think another question that I get a lot, Glenn, and I'm also very curious on your opinion on that. Like, people always ask me, like, yeah, but what type of content or how much content do I then need on a quarterly or a yearly basis? And I know that's a very delicate question, but it might be interesting to just go back and forth about it a little bit. Like, is there some kind of framework we could give people, or what would you say?
Yeah. So do you have a piece of string, and how long is it? Right. It's, it can be that type of question. Yeah. How long is a piece of string? It can be this long, this long, this long. Again, the purpose of everything that we do is, what is it that you want to achieve? Why are we creating this content? And we can break it down, right? We can break it down into strategic content planning and tactical content planning. So, are we looking long term? Because we've been to the end and worked out what we want to achieve, and we do actually want to create something long-term as a wider strategy for our partners in order to increase their partner experience. So we look at the long term, and then does it become a blog a month? Are we looking at that type of content, or is it something that we can do on a quarterly basis because it's a little bit bigger and more compelling? That might be a white paper. Is it something that we want to do once every 6 months? Okay, because that fits with where revenue is going and how we're having regular planning sessions with partners, and there could be some seasonal activity in there as well. Or is there one single compelling event that happens once a year? It might be a kickoff, it might be some kind of customer interaction that we need to create some buzz around and create some huge content around once a year. And if we're doing that, if it is a big event like a kickoff or customer forum or council or something, then actually we look at the content that we can create pre the event, during the event, and after the event. So again, it's just really important to kind of break it down into those things if you're looking at a longer term strategy. Otherwise, it kind of goes back also to use some of the examples from earlier in my slides. If you're looking short term, great. How can we boost something over the next month? So what do we need to do daily? What do we need to do weekly? What do we need to do fortnightly in order to drive that? It could be a series of short videos. It could be a series of connected LinkedIn and Twitter posts. It could be a series of live Q&As, for example. I think it's really difficult to kind of say, here's the model, go do it, right? Because organizations and people are clearly by nature very individual. But I think it's really important to actually create a plan. That I think is probably the best advice. And then you can break it down into strategic activity, long term, tactical activity, short term, and then you kind of build around those things.
Yeah, I fully agree there. I think if I think about that, like one of the very important things is continuity. I think that's what I see a lot, is that like we create very much content in a certain period of time, but then for a very long time, nothing. And for partners, they always really like expectation management. So I think that suits your point very well, like create a plan where you actually communicate with partners, because it does two things. It creates accountability for yourself, because you already communicated to your partners when they can expect what type of content, etc., and how you're going to help them with it. And it highly increases adoption, because partners are expecting it already. They can create time for it. Maybe indeed, if you do a forum or like a live event, they need to know it, but very much upfront as well. So that can really help you there to increase that.
Exactly, it really does. It's about, once you've been to the end and worked out the why, it really helps to keep everybody informed and keep expectations in the right place. Because if you know what partners want and you know what their expectations are and you know why, then you know what ultimately to deliver them. And if you say you're going to do it, then do it, and keep consistency. Some content is almost always better than no content, okay? Because you can always be sure that somebody else is producing content for your partners, and it's probably going to be their competitors, and if your competitors, sorry, and if your competitors are doing that and you're not, then they've got a better chance of increasing their partner experience, increasing mind share, increasing levels of partner engagement, which ultimately leads to them increasing their spend with your competitor and not you.
That's exactly not what we want, of course.
Yeah, because the other thing as well, the other thing which is really, really important, Rick, is working out the types of content and the purpose for it from your point of view, right? Because we can always go to the end really, really easily and talk about what's in it for the partner. Of course we do. We have to do that to feed our content strategy, but we have to have our own content strategy as well, right? And particularly in partner marketing, we can break that down into two things: the to piece and the through piece. Right. So when you talk about levels of consistency, you have to be super consistent within your two partner communications to make sure that they are always well informed, as you talked about earlier. And then that translates into how that can potentially become a through piece, and they can use that as part of their enablement to go to market. And the element of choice and preference, as you described in your slides earlier, vitally important. People are getting too bored of being told what to do. They want to make their own decisions, because the majority of buyers, as we saw earlier, are the millennials and the Gen Zs, and they want to consume content before they make a decision. So it's really, really important that we get the to and the through piece correct.
Yeah, I like that one. And there's also a lot to combine there, or sorry, to take from one or the other. Because, for example, if you're in your two partner communication, let's say you've done a webinar or a live event, there's so much content in that webinar or live event oftentimes already that you could perfectly use towards the end user market as well for the through partner marketing. Maybe you have a super nice customer case that you presented to all your partners. Like, why not make sure you package it, you create a campaign around it, and you can actually help partners that are also active in such a vertical with such a customer case that they can share with the end user, or maybe exactly the other way around. If you've created end user material, that you can utilize that in your two partner communication again. So it's really, when you are talking about efficiency, all the time looking what type of content do we have and how can we tweak it a little bit to create true partner versus two partner again.
Yeah, exactly. And if we think about, if we go back to the basics of, 40 plus years ago when IBM basically started the channel, right? And you kind of go, what is the channel, or what is the new ecosystem or the hybrid environment? If it's not, having one or more third parties selling your stuff, right, to go and help you to reach a much bigger audience. I know that's very naked. I know that's very simple. I know that's a really kind of basic view of what this is all about. But that's essentially what it is. And we can do exactly the same. When you're amplifying whatever it is you're selling out to a much wider audience via one or more third parties, right? That's great. That leads to a number, that's selling, and then that's to and through marketing, right? You can do the same amplification with your content. So that content can and should and will reach a much wider audience if you use your one or more third parties to help you do that. The only way that they're going to do that is if you get the two piece right, to help to educate them, to inform them, and to engage them. And then you get the through piece right, which means that they can take your content, do whatever they need to, whether it's a co-brand or a rework or a review or a refresh or an automation piece, like you mentioned, the always on marketing, and amplify that out to a much wider audience than you're ever going to use. And if you do that consistently over time, then what happens if you meet at every stage awareness, consideration and decision making, if you do that consistently over time, then you are providing those new buyers, the new digital buyers, a piece of content that satisfy their need to review and engage with a minimum of 3 pieces of content before they start getting into consideration and decision making, before they're going to buy. So it has to be about using the channel model that we know and love, and using it also not only to sell stuff, but also to amplify our content out, because that new buyer needs to see it before they make their own decision, before they're told what to do by a demo or a salesperson or whatever it is.
Yeah, I love that. And if you do that well through your partners and with your partners, then you have the ultimate scaling mechanism.
Exactly.
I see a final question here, Glenn. Maybe nice to end with this one. Onboarding my first new reseller, what would you recommend the main agenda points for our first marketing sync should be?
One question. How can we help you? That's what that whole meeting should be about, right? What have you got? What do you need? How can we help you? Okay. If we go, as we talked about earlier, if we go to the end, which means this partner is fully engaged, fully onboarded, fully happy with everything that you're doing. If we look at what that will achieve in, let's say 6 months' time, yeah, we set a goal in maybe 12 months' time. How are they getting to transaction? How, and why? That meeting should be all about how can we help you? And then it should be about, great, thank you for your answer. How can we do this together? Okay, because we've got loads of content, we've got loads of knowledge, we've got loads of insight, loads of expertise. Let us understand what you've got. Let's put them together and let's create something that goes to your audience, that's specific to you, and that will help to enable you to go sell our stuff easier. That's where I would recommend that meeting goes.
Yeah, I fully agree there. And combined with that, I think very much focus also on who are we selling to. So have a very clear view with your partner together, what type of vertical or what type of market are you going to attack? Because that will really help you in what you said, Glenn, like creating the start with the end in mind. That's a massive pillar for having the strategy right. Like, who are we selling to? What do we then need to convince them? What does the journey look like? And then you can start looking indeed at, okay, what type of content do we already have? What do we have? What does the partner have? And then fill in the gaps.
Exactly. And, just one final point, because I feel a whole new webinar coming on, Rick, right? But, but what we've done is we've talked a lot about the to and through. Yeah. And we've not talked about the for and with. Okay, because there's a huge piece in content creation, which is all about the with. It's the co-brand, it's the joint message, it's the joint proposition development, which can work, on a much more intensive kind of individual basis. But it's an unbelievably powerful thing to do, to go to market with your partner. Encourage partners to go to market with each other. Joint solution, joint proposition, joint messaging. And you can do all of those things, and it is relatively straightforward. You've just got to actually believe in it, and because it's entirely believable. So yeah, maybe we've done the to and the through. Rick, maybe we need to do the with and the for.
That's the deal. I'm definitely up for that. I think that was it for today. I would really like to thank you, Glenn, for making time for us today to host this webinar together, and of course, very much all the attendees of today that participated and listened to us for a full hour. And definitely that next webinar together is coming up. I think also a podcast in a short notice, so we'll make sure we keep the content machine rolling.
Very good. My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Rick, and thanks everyone for listening and for your comments.
Thanks a lot. Bye.